want to give a Yasher Koyach to Rabbi Goldstein and all the Shurim this summer. So the initials of Chaim Luzim, Shim Shanaya, our dear friend Luzi, who started the Shurim, and we're continuing in his course. He had the Shurim going for many years, hundreds of Shurim. Again, yeah, thank you, Rabbi Goldstein. It's not sure fourth time already, or something like that. So it's not everybody that we ask to come back. So, but now it's Chazaka, so we'll have to have you every summer.
Shkoyach Avram for the warm welcoming and the invitation. I was told originally that coming tonight and just say over stories. That's not what the Olam likes. It's a very intellectual Olam, very smart Olam. So I wanted to speak a little bit about halacha. You know, we're entering tonight the period of mourning of the Beis Hamikdash. And Lamaisa, what's left for us here in Galus is the Gemara tells us what we have left here in Galus is our Batikisiyos, our Batimidrashis, our study halls, our shuls. And Akidei Kach, the Svarim tell us it's a microcosm of Beis Hamikdash. There's an amazing Gemara. The Gemara says that we just read in last week's parsha that from all the brachas that Bilam said, eventually all of them turned back to become klolus, except for one. And that was the bracha of Ma'atoidir Alecha Yaakov Vishknei Secha, which the Gemara tells us about the Knesset, about the Midrashis. And Chatzkel Abramsky says an incredible pshat. He says, what's pshat? From all the brachas that Bilam said over, everything reversed back to what he originally wanted to say, klol. The Eibush turned back to a bracha. Says the Gemara that it eventually reversed back to a klol, except for one, and that was the bracha of Ma'atoidir Alecha Yaakov Vishknei Secha, about the Knesset, about the Midrashis. Says Chatzkel Abramsky, why after that? Why after that bracha? From all the other brachas, that had to stay, that never became reversed. So Chatzkel Abramsky, you know why? Because all the other brachas, if they reverse back into Klaus, it doesn't threaten or jeopardize the existence of Klal Yisrael. But once we lose our shuls, once we lose our Batim Midrashim, it jeopardizes and could perhaps even annihilate the Jewish nation. And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom, even though we allowed the other brachas to reverse back to Klaus, but Elu Batim Midrashis, the Beis Haknesses, the Beis Hamedrash, and the time of Tzara, we come, we gather together, we daven, we mispalel, we learn together. The schus of Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew, that can never be taken away from us because it's our survival kit, and it guarantees our security in Golus. And therefore, I want to spend some time on the halachic ramifications of the Kedusha and the different halachas that really come out from the Beis Haknesses and Beis Hamedrash. I would like to focus more on the Knesset. I don't think I'm going to have time to get to the Midrashis. But let's begin with a Mordik Sipurna. The Sipurna says in the Pasuk, Eshep Soisai Tishmaru, Mikdashi Tiro, writes the Sipurna, Mikdashi Tiro, even though the Pashas of the Pasuk is referring to the Beis HaMikdash, writes the Sipurna, HaMekoimis HaMikdashim Begalus. Veheim, Bate Knesset, Bate Midrashis, Alpha Pishachar Beis HaMikdash. Even though it's Char Beis HaMikdash, there's a mitzvah, it's referring to a Dairaisi, says the Pasuk Mikdashi Tiro is referring to Al Bate Knesset here in Galus. The Smak, one of the Rishonim who comprised a Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Smak writes in Siman Ches, in Mitzvah Ches, Liyari Migdash. The mitzvah of Liyari Migdash considers Migdash Tiro, writes the Smak, Ubizman Hazeh, Beis Haknesses Migdash Ma'at. The din of Yiris HaMigdash, writes the Smak, is a din Dairaisi in our Shul. The Ran in Megillah learns, he doesn't say it's Dairaisi, the Ran in Megillah uses the Lashon of Etilu B'I Chachamim Kedushim Midivreim. The Ran learns that the din of Yiris HaMigdash that applies to our Shul is only Midiravonim. But the Smak is Mamash Din Dairaisa. And it's because of this we can understand the Gemara Masechtas Brachos and Avot. The Gemara Brachos and Avot tells us that Tanya Abi bin Yamin Noimer. Ein Tefillah, Ela B'Makom Rina. When a person davens, the place that he should daven is B'Makom Rina. What's the Makom Rina? The Makom Rina is the place where we say Shiras is Shvachos, where we daven with Mispal that's in the shul. So to also says the Gemara that if a person wants that his tefillah should be heard, he should come to the Bati Knesset, and the Rambam learns that this is even referring to Tefillah B'Tziva. That's a much for a person to gather together a minyan. He has a choice: can he make the minyan in his house, or go to minyan in the shul? The Rambam is going to pass in Shulchan Aruch and Simon Tzaddik. The Gemara is referring to Tefillah B'Tziva, that there's a mile, there's a benefit that Tefillah Nishmas, all about the Knesset, that's even going by Tefillah B'Tziva. Amr Vavim Barodo, Amr Yitzchak Minayin Shekar Baruch Hu. Matzi B'Beis Haknesses, how do you know the Rebbeinu Shalom is Matzi Beis Haknesses? Shemar Elikim Nitzov Adas Kel. The Shulchan Aruch and Simon Tzaddik. The Shulchan Aruch writes, Mishi Yesh Lo Beis Haknesses Be'ira. Person, let's say, who has a shul in the city. The Ein Nichnas, but he doesn't walk into the shul. He's Nikra Shachin Ra. He's called a bad neighbor. He says a frightening thing. The Gorim Loi Lebanov the Gorim Gullus Loi Lebanov. He causes, in a sense, excommunication, exile for himself and for his children, because that's how chamor it is for a person not to be nichnas into a basic Knesses. You know, we're a world today that we thrive and we live off segulas. We hear of a segula, it becomes a very popular thing today, that many come and run after it. The Mishnah Berurah here in Simon Tzaddik, he writes an incredible school. This is from the Chavetz Chaim, and he quotes from Kadmonu that the person who's Zohar, Kolamashkim, Umari, the basic Knesses, the person comes to the shul in the morning, he comes at night, is Marichin LaYomov. It's a bracha that'll have longevity, Arichis Yomov. So we see over here the importance of what a shul is. It's literally a microcosm. It's a manifestation of what the Shrin is of Beis Hamikdash. We have the Smat telling us that the Yiris Hamikdash applies to the shuls, and it's after they come to Mitzvah D'Oraisa. And even like the Ran is still in the Rabbanon. With all this, we can understand the Gemara Gilach Ches. The Gemara codifies the halacha Tad Rabbanon Beis Haknesses Noig Mem Kalas Rosh. There's an issa for a person to be noig, to conduct himself in a light manner, frivolous behavior into a shul, which means also besides Kalas Rosh, ein oichlem behen. Person can't eat there, in shoysen ben, he can't drink, in neusim ben, he can't adorn himself, in Thailand ben, he can't use it as a tourist site, ein nichnasim ben b'chamav ne'achamav, it's not hot outside. A person wants to cool off at the Eknishna. He wants to come to the shul just to have Baruch Shem here. A person wants to come in to cool off. So it says the Gemara, he can't do that. It's a bizarre to the Beis Haknesses, ubiksham ne'akshamim. If it's raining outside and he wants to take a refuge, he wants to be secure from the rain, to protect himself, he can't come to the shul to protect himself from the rain. As always, look at the Gemara. So the shaila is, I'd like to discuss tonight. Here we have the Gemara Psuk, Megillah Chavches. Ein oichlem ben, vein shoysen ben, vein nusim ben. So how come today, you go to many shuls, people are constantly eating in the shuls? What's the pshat? What are they soymach? You know, by the Sfaradish Yidden, by the Sfaradish Yidden, they're very makbidish. You know, in the shul, they have a special place where they eat. Nobody eats in the shul. There's the Syrian Jews, the Sfaradim, if you ever done by the Sfaradim, they're very makbid on the cover of the Beis Haknesses. Besides the fact that they're extremely zar, they won't talk during davening, but they're very makbid. They're eating things, let's say activities that they do, whether it's eating or drinking, they have a side room to be able to eat there. So the question is, today, I don't think you could have an operational shul without serving food. If you don't have the Danishes by the yard side, the breakfast in the morning, where you have food at night in the shul, you might as well put the locks in the doors. So the question is, what's the pshat? When I say the Gemara Megillah Chavches says, ein oichlem ben, vein shoysen ben. So how do we figure this out?
Beis Midrash.
Well,
Beis Midrash.
So the Beis Hamikdash they ate.
Beis Midrash.
Beis Midrash. So so you bring up a great point. You bring up a great point in Beis Midrash, but the truth is, if you look at the Mechab in Shulchan Aruch and Simon Kufnan Aleph, the Mechab says that the heter of Beis Midrash is only b'makom tzarich gadol, in dire need. The Ramah is chaylik on him, but the Shulchan Aruch says that's only because they're there the whole day. Now, the Bir Halacha has a question, even if, let's say, someone's in the Beis HaMedrash the whole day. But our Beis HaMedrash is also Beis HaKnesses. So Bishlam, in the times that, let's say, the Shulchan Aruch you're referring to, that's talking about that a special room for the shul and a special room for learning. So Beis HaMedrash, in a sense, is only designated for learning. People spend time learning in the room, so mainly they're allowed to go ahead and eat. But it says the Bir Halacha, what about today, where our Beit HaKnesses is also at the same time Beis HaMedrash? Maybe perhaps it should take on the Chumrah of Beis HaKnesses as well. But there is leniency what you're saying, but you have to say a share just on Beis Medrash. But Pashas, if you look at the Shulchan Aruch, it's not the case. For two reasons. One is because the Ramah says they have to be there for a lengthy amount of time, not just in the morning and at night. And also the Bir Halacha is concerned that he lives at Sarachian, that every Beis HaMedrash today is also Beis HaKnesses, so perhaps it takes along with it the Chumash of Beis HaKnesses. But you're saying a good point. There are some who suggest what you're saying. But I just want to go down a little bit of a different route tonight. So let's start with the Gemara. Another Gemara, Megillah Chavches. Amr Abasi, Bati Knesiyos Sheba Bavel, Al Tanai Heinasu. All the shuls that they built in Bavel, they made a special condition. They stipulated at the time of the construction and the erecting of the shul that we're making a Tanai, that whatever we want to use the room for, we're going to use the room, we're going to use the shul for, to eat, to drink, as long as it's not kalas rosh, as long as it's not frivolous activities, we're going to eat there and drink there, that's fine. As long as it's not kalas rosh, says the Gemara, and therefore it's no issue with it. So l'chari you say, okay, the shul's over, that's the problem. Perishing Mar Megillah Haknesses. In all the shuls and chutzlaretz, there's a stipulation, there's a time. At the time of the Beis Haknesses, they were making a condition that we're going to use the shuls to eat as well. And once there's a Tanai, it says the Gemara there's no issue. But there's a big problem with that. Because the Gemara says that Rav Adam Rava was talking and learning with an Amora, with Rava, and they went outside, they were schmoozing and learning. It says the Gemara, Zilcha Mikshur, it started to rain. When it started to rain, they didn't want to get wet. It was raining outside, so they came back into the shul. And they figured we're going to finish learning inside the shul so they don't get wet from the rain. Says the Gemara that they said, they made a declaration and they told everybody, you should know, this that we came back into the shul is not because of the rain. That we would never do, because then we're using the shul for a mundane activity, for a mundane purpose, for our own hana, for our own benefit. So don't think for a second that we came back to the shul because we didn't want to get wet. Do you know why we went back into the shul? Because Shmaitz Abo Yistana. When you learn, you need clarity of mind. If the settings, the atmosphere is comfortable, it's easier for the mind to work. So therefore they felt if it's raining outside, they're not going to think as well. It's like this, they'll come to the shul. They're not going to be wet from the rain. So therefore they'll be able to learn the cities better. That's why they came back. So Shlozach the Kasha, 1 second. Why did they have to make such a declaration? They were in Chutzlaretz, they were in the diaspora, they were in Bavel, and the Gemara just got through saying that all the Bati Knesses in Bavel is out tonight in a sin, it was made with a precondition. So why did they have to say that they came back to the shul because it was better for their learning, even if it wasn't better for their learning? As I fact, the Ramban, Yerzerua, all the Rishonim grappling with this kasha. How do you reconcile this seemingly contradiction between these two Gemaras? On one hand, Ravasi is telling us, but the Knesset Shabbat Bavel is out tonight in a siyos. And Mitzad Sheni, the Gemara says that they came back into the shul and they told everybody, you should know, we're only coming back, not because we wanted to save ourselves in the rain. We're only coming back because we could learn better. But without the sorrow of learning better, they wouldn't have gone back into the shul. In fact, Taisus, why not? It's Abba Shal Tonight in a siyon. And for Taisus. Taisus answers, you should know, because this is the Gemara that says that the basic Haknesses Shabbat Bavel is out tonight in a siyos, it's made with a precondition. So Taisus, that only works when the shul is no longer functioning. It's no longer in operation. A lot of times, you see, let's say, in the mountains, there's certain places. I remember, my wife's from Minnesota, so we go there in the summers. We used to go visit in Duluth, Minnesota. It was once a flourishing Jewish community with hundreds and hundreds of families. The shul it's closed. It's not in operation. But there was a few people that were still left. So he asked the old shamash if he could open up the shul for us. We wanted to see the shul. It's where my wife's grandfather had his bar mitzvah. So I remember I went to the back. It was a beautiful edifice, a tremendous shul. You saw hundreds of seats, chairs. It was a gorgeous shul. I went into the back of the office. I was looking through they had the memberships books from the 1930s and 1940s, and they had next to their names the donations that they gave. They had everything so masudah. They were talking about hundreds of families, and yet, unfortunately, there was no yeshivas there, and they lost their children. They intermarried, and that was it. But they have a standing shul, but it's no longer functioning. It's not in operation. So Taisus, that's when a Tanai works. If it's b'chubanon, it's no longer in operation. That's what the Gemara means that a Tanai works. However, if it's a functioning shul, the shul has minyanim, people are davening there. So Taisus, that over there, of course not. A Tanai is not going to work. You know why? Because you have the Gemara that we mentioned. Enoichem ben, ben shoysim ben, ben nusim ben, ben mitaylim ben, ben yechnosim ben bechav ne'achama, u'akshom ne'akshomim. And Taisus even more so. Look at the Gemara with Dameroyim. Dameroyim said, why did they go back into the shul? Because he can learn better. It's mashma without the learning better for the Kshom, they would have went back. So Taisus, you see, when it's in operation, the Tanai doesn't work. And then he concludes that this is only in Chutzlaretz. But in Eretz Yisrael, even if a shul is no longer in operation, over there, even b'chubanon einoichem ben ve'shoysim ben. You know why? Because in Chutzlaretz, when Mashiach's going to come, when Mashiach's going to come, so it'll be Butler Kedushas from all the shuls in Chutzlaretz. But in Eretz Yisrael, Mashiach's going to come, they're going to be revived. So even though they're the Churban of Eretz Yisrael, being that they be revived, and it's not Tifka Kedushas, the Kedusha is not going to be Paka, it's not going to leave. So in Eretz Yisrael, it's always awesome. So like Taisus, we can't use this Gemara as a heter. Because Taisus is clearly saying that the time works, the Bavel, only b'makom that it's the Churbanon, but not the Yeshuva. The Rambam in Perek Yud Aleph Halacha Vav, he says mamash like Taisus. He says the lashon is ein oichem ben, ein shoysim ben, usim ben, ve'im etaylim ben, ein echnosim ben b'chav ne'achama, u'kshom ne'akshom. Mamash like Shittas Taisus. However, there's Ramban. Ramban is the same kasha. Why did the Amoraim have to say they went back into the shul? Because they were able to learn better. I wanted to say because in Babel, Tanai works. Says the Ramban like this. It's like the Ramban. that even while it's a functioning shul, and even while it's in operation, but the makom that it's a big tzarech, it's in dire need. He says the Gemara Pesachim talks about. I remember today it's not so common, but I remember growing up, they used to make kiddush Friday night in shul. A lot of young Israel, Jewish centers still do it. The person gets up, he recites where the minute come from. The minute came from that Iranian who had nowhere to eat on Shabbos. Many of them didn't even have a place to sleep. So they used to make kiddush and meals in the shul for the poor people.
So said, you don't have those situations anymore. So why do certain shuls still do it now?
So a lot of it is once you start a certain custom, once a shul has a minhag, people don't feel comfortable switching what their minhag is. So that's very much why they kept it, because since when the Shulchan Aruch wrote it, there was something that was negeya. So Mamela, it's not, they don't want to abolish something that they did for so many years. They grew up with it. It's not so easy to abolish it.
It's not a bracha of Atala, though?
No, because it won't be a bracha of Atala because Lamaisa they give it to Ketanim to drink. So they do have a cut and drink the wine. There's other cheshbonis. I'll tell you afterwards if you want why it won't be bracha of Atala, because the Yotz Kiddush Machum Suda according to Mechaber Al Yayin, there's different cheshbonis in Mishnah and Gimel. But it's another share. But so the Ramban says that in the case of Aniyim, where it's a tzarech gadol for poor people, so then the Tanai works. It means the Gemara's allowance of Tanai, it's not carte blanche that you make it Tanai, you can do whatever you want. You have to down and judge each case on its own. So when we're talking about a case of Aniyim, where it's mamash tzarech gadol, what are you going to eat? This is the Shabbos meal. Over there says the Ramban works. However, if it's not a tzarech gadol, if it's not dying need, so then the Tanai is not going to work. Now it's interesting because the Beis Halacha wants to say that according to this Ramban, that says that the Tanai works in Chutz La'aretz for tzarech gadol, even when the shul's in operation and it's standing. So the Beis Halacha wants to venture to say the same halacha should be in Eretz Yisrael. In Bishlam like Kaisis and El B'Churbanon, there's no more kedusha because when Mashiach comes, it's not going to be revived. So you can say a chiluk between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. But the Ramban will allow in Chutz La'aretz even the yeshuva, and even when it's still standing. That means the Ramban held even when there is kedusha, the Makom Tzarech Gadol works. So the Beis Halacha felt if that's the case, the Makom Tzarech Gadol in Eretz Yisrael also, if they made a Tanai, it should work. So why does the Gemara have to say Bavel and not Eretz Yisrael if it's the same thing? Says the Beis Halacha because what the Gemara means is that in Bavel they used to make the Tanai. In Eretz Yisrael they didn't make the Tanai. They didn't want. Maybe they had one shul for Aniyim, and all the other shuls they built without a Tanai. But in Bavel, their practice was that they used to make a Tanai in every shul. But halachically, it wouldn't make a difference mitzad if they did make a Tanai, that it would work in Makom Tzarech Gadol. I said, what about the case of the Gemara? So says the Ramban, in the case of the Gemara, people constantly walk in the street, it starts raining, and they don't melt. They continue, they go where they have to go, even though it's raining. So Mela, being that walking in the rain is not something that's such a tzarech gadol. For rather government people every day walk in the rain. So that's what these Amoraim felt, that it's not enough of a tzarech to be samech on the Tanai. Very good shmak. So now, perhaps, 1 second. So we have a shtickle heter, but the shaila is, are our meals, a guy makes a yahrzeit kiddush, can we call that a tzarech gadol? Shal shudis, can we call that a tzarech gadol? I mean, people can eat at home, they can eat somewhere else. Person, let's say, it's an offer in shul, is that a tzarech gadol? We can start clearing. According to Ramban, it's a very touch and go kind of shaila. We have to start trying to figure out, is it called a tzarech gadol or not? And Akadei Kach Ramban says that even if it's raining outside, it's not a tzarech gadol to go back into the shul. If you would ask me, I would say, of course it's tzarech gadol. I don't want to get wet. But still, the Ramban says that doesn't classify as a tzarech gadol. Le shita, shita sar zerua. The shita of the Zerua is the same shita as Rashi. And listening to this Zerua, it's an incredible Zerua. One of the Rishonim. He writes like this: So Zerua, Kol Hani de Brayse da Aser. All the cases that the Brayse brought down in Oichlin, in Shoisen, in Mitailen, in Usan, all those cases of the Zerua. The Aser is dafka the Beis Haknesses shel Eretz Yisrael. That's only the Beis Haknesses shel Eretz Yisrael. However, but Kulu Shor Beis Haknesses shel Bavel, all these things are mutter in the Beis Haknesses shel Bavel. Hilkach mutter lecha v'lishtoi seida idna b'batek niyasiyos. Today in the diaspora, we're allowed to go ahead and do all these things as long as it's not out of switch. As long as we're not playing hockey in the shul. Zaktar Zerua it's all mutter because al Tanai Mesuyin, the al Tanai Hein Mesuyin. And therefore, Zakar Zerua, the Batek Niyasiyos, the Gemara is telling us you're allowed to eat and drink and do all these things. So the kasha is, so why did these Amoraim say they're only going back in the shul because it's clears their mind to learn? Let them say they're going back because in Babel the Altnei Nesiyon, Zakar Zerua, He Machrim Alatzma. We discuss this, they want to be machrim on themselves, but make it the din, they're allowed to go back in order to protect themselves from the rain. So now the big question is, what we paskin? We have 3 shittas in Rishonim. We have shittas at places of Rambam that says Tanai doesn't work. when it's a functioning and operational, and that shul's in operation. It only works for Chabonah. We have the Ramban that says no, even the Yeshua, even when the shul's functioning and it's operational, but it has to be at Tzarech Gadol. What kind of Tzarech Gadol? Where are the going to go? We have nowhere to place them. And then we have the Yor Zerua, who's Mamash Mikatzel Katzel, that says no, the Bavel, Al Tanai, and Assyrian, everything's mutter as long as it's not Kalas Rosh. How do we pass it? Comes the Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Yud Aleph. You tell me, who does he passing like? Listen to a Lashon. In B'Shas Binyan Beis Haknesses Hisnolov. If let's say while they were building the shul, they were erecting the shul, at the time of construction, Hisnolov l'shtamish boy, they made a tonight, they made a precondition to be able to use it. Mutter l'shtamish boy b'churbanoi. It's mutter to use b'churbanoi only when it's destroyed, it's not functioning. I'll be yeshuvoi, but if the shul's operational, loy mahani tonight, a condition will not work. The medron amurim, even when b'churbanoi doesn't work, that's only but the kinesios shel chutzlaretz. Al but the kinesios shel eretz yisrael loy mahani but tonight. Whose sheet is that? That's the sheet of Taisus, no? And the Rambam, right? There's the sheet of Taisus and the Rambam. He says, "Before should only be Chabanon and not the Yeshuvah." And Eretz Yisrael says it doesn't work. The Ramaz doesn't argue with him. The Ramaz not Magiyah. As always, look, the Machaber, the Ramaz silent on this halacha. It's interesting. There's a Taz. The Taz is parenthetically, not to get anybody confused, but the Taz is the Kasha and Reisa Machtes. The Shulchan Aruch was the one who said to make Kiddush and Shul. So the Taz says 1 second. If the Shulchan Aruch and Kuf Nun Aleph passes like the sheet of Taisus, how do they make Kiddush in the shul? Only the Ramban could do it for Aniyim. So the Taz therefore says that the Shulchan Aruch doesn't go like Taisus. And he says it's a steer in the Shulchan Aruch, but really he goes with the Ramban. But that's Agav. But here we see clearly that the Shulchan Aruch is going like the sheet of Taisus. And therefore, the Yeshuvah, there's no heter. The Piskei Teshuvos writes that by Chassidim, they don't call their shuls Beis Haknesses. They don't call it a shul, they call it a shtibel. He says, why do they call it a shtibel? Because they're worried about this Shulchan Aruch. A shtibel, they say it's not a shul. You know what it is? It's a place where we gather, we enjoy ourselves, we schmooze, we cook, we eat, we drink, we learn, we daven, but it's not a shul. It's a shtibel. It's a place where we gather. So writes the Piskei Teshuvos, the Chassidish Rebbe's, the reason why they did it is because after all, if you're going to make it into a Beis Haknesses, then you're going to be, what are you going to do with the Shulchan Aruch? What are you going to do with Shittas HaTaisus? What do you do with the Shita Ramban? Every time they want to bring in food into the shul, they have to worry, is it Tzarech Gadol or not Tzarech Gadol? And the Menich Chassidim, they like to have Hering and Leikich and Bronfen every single day. So therefore they said, we have an Eitzah, a solution to solve this issue. We're going to call it a Shtibel. It says the Piskei Teshuvos, 1 second. Not so plushing. You know, when you're going fundraising for a Shtibel, people are giving money thinking that they're being Mekayim the mitzvah of Asil Migdash Shechati B'Seichem. V'Eli Migdash Ma'atil B'Tu B'Nisiyas B'Tu Midrashis. I'm being Mekayim the Smak. I'm being Mekayim Abba Ben Yom, the Gemara and Brachos that we mentioned. And the truth is, he doesn't have Kedushas Beis Haknesses. So he doesn't have Kedushas Beis Haknesses. He's solidifying money. He's soliciting money that really Be'etzim doesn't have the Kedusha. And he says even more than that. He says if that's the case, the Metziri says when people are dying there, they don't have the Kedusha of a shul. So Piskei Teshuvos is not so fond of this idea to go ahead and call it a shtibel. So what's the eitzah on this? Call it a shtibel, but at the end of the day, we want to be able to daven in a place with a special kedusha. Shulchan Aruch Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Dalet. Shulchan Aruch writes, the same Shulchan Aruch, that if the reason why you're making a meal is for the benefit of the shul itself, then it's permitted. Like he says, let's say you want to hire a security guard. You want a security guard to protect the shul. And over there, the security guard who has to stay in the shul, he has to sleep there, he has to eat there, or else he's not going to take the job. It says in Shulchan Aruch that over there, he's allowed to eat. Why? Because it's l'tzarech the Beis Haknesses itself. He says also, when it used to be Ma'abed Shana, you'd go ahead and eat an extra month. So the Mishnah, the Shnayis calls him Rosh Hashanah, they'd throw a whole feast. And they would always, the Sanhedrin would come, and they would make a lavish Suda. They make a Suda. And the suda that they would make, I'm sorry, it was not a lavish suda actually, and they'd make a suda they would eat in the shul. So, what's the shot? Since it's a sudas mitzvah, let's say by Ma'aber Chodesh, it's a sudas mitzvah, so maybe perhaps we could say that we could learn from over here that if it's a sudas mitzvah, maybe that we could have in the shul. Like maybe a shal shudas, maybe you could call that a sudas mitzvah, or a bar mitzvah, or let's say an office, maybe, I don't know if an office sudas mitzvah, let's say Shabbat brachas, a siyam hashas, that would be a sudas mitzvah. But the problem is the Mishabur brings down the Magen Avram that they only allowed Suda for the Ma'aber as a Chodesh because over there is a very minimal Suda. They only serve some pas or kidneys, some bread and legumes, but there's no shichus, there's no beverages, there's no drinks that have shichus to it. But big Sudas, like today, our Kadeshim, which Baruch Hashem, we have beautiful Kadeshim today, that the Mogen Avram says that that's not going to fly. Kavod Hamad Yosef, he disagrees. Kavod says, no. Even though the Mishnah Berurah brings the Mogen Avram, they're only allowed by Ma'abris HaChodesh because there's a small Suda. And you're also allowed to see Mashas because your Shulchan says that see Mashas is a Kavod learning. And since the Kavod learning, that's like what the basic Haknesses, basic measure is all about. So being that it's a Siyam Hashas, it's a Kavod learning, so Memela, that's why the Mishnah Berurah allowed that. It says the Abiyah, no. There are many Mishanim who disagree and hold that anything that's a Sudas mitzvah, we could put it under the umbrella of Kuf Nun Aleph Sef Daled, that the same way we matter for the Suda that the Sanhedrin made when they wanted to extend the month, who had also be passed by Allah Maisa, any Sudas mitzvah you can make in a shul. And he says also even more than that. He says, are you going to tell me why Shal Shudas is a Sudas mitzvah? What's the big Sudas mitzvah about a Shal Shudas? He says, Masha Gam Shedoshim Ba'alocha V'Agoda. Being that they're saying over different Torah. People are speaking Torah Halacha, people are learning. He says, Rabbi Avram, you'll appreciate this. Ein lecha davar gadol, Yosem imizike harabim. Yosem, there's nothing greater than Zikir Harabim, and therefore it warrants us to this mitzvah came, and therefore Zakti Aviyah Mervado, when there's a mitzvah involved, we can say that's going to be mutter. So, okay, we could maybe Shabbat Bracha is Siyam, maybe tonight's learning, it's all a chelik of the learning, we're learning together, it enhances the learning. But what about if you go to shul, they have yard-side danishes, people just, any opportunity do we have to put out food, we put out food, right? But I mean, shul also, everybody knows, you want your shul running, you want people to come, you got to put out food. Men kemach ein Torah. Let me end off with an Igris Moshe. And this Igris Moshe is off the charts. What am I marking? I'm going to read it inside because it's such an incredible tshuva. It's not that long, but I just want to read it inside. I don't think I'm making it up. If you go back, if the Shulchan Aruch passing like place in the Rambam, that was clear. The Rambam passing like that, places passing like that. The Mo agreed with Shulchan Aruch. Comes at Moshe, and Moshe says like this: Igris Moshe, Chelak Al Sim Mem Hey. He has another tshuva in Chelak Daled. It only wants to matter Sudas mitzvahs, but listen to this Igris Moshe Chelak Al Sim Mem Hey. I believe this is what the Belt is Samachar. Kidiski Rov, but I believe that this is what it boils down to. Ukimedumni. Shebahari Mekoymis in many places. Noigin lahakol ashloy shasachak. Even Shloy b'shat Ramban said shasachak. Says Moshe, it seems to me that even Shloy, this is what 67 years ago. If you can imagine today, even Shloy b'shasachak and letzorich mitzvah ksas. Even if the tzorich mitzvah ksas, ger lechol suda shlishis b'Shabbos. Av she'ein tzorich gadol. Why? Sherei yachol kolechol lechol b'Beis. So everybody could go home shal shudis. Noigin kemat b'chol ha'mekoymis lahati. Kemat all shuls they have shal shudis. They have shal shudis, and they don't refrain from making it in the shul itself. V'ach lasis mishte b'kriyas chasen, like an offer of oy bar mitzvah noigin lahakol av she'ein bar she'esh ezeh in your mitzvah, even though what's exactly the mitzvah to make an offer of kiddush. And then he concludes v'chasidim, and he doesn't mention because of shtibluch. I wonder why, but he says v'chasidim noigin b'chol bati knesir shalahen lahater af bidvar harishus mamish kehod ha'achila v'shtiya b'yom ha'yartzai, which is mamish rishus. Because the Gemara says they used to fast in the day of the yard cycle. Im kain, so Reb Moshe, v'chrochen loymar, that we paskin shenoigin kirashi u'ka'ozirua, shemuter al tnai afilu b'yeshuv v'nachilu b'yeshtiya u'ka'agav nafilu b'loy derechik. Says Reb Moshe, poik chazim ayam v'davar, look at what he's doing. It must be that the belt's following the Orzirua. V'nimso, shenifsa k'neinat k'kein l'halacha. It must be that we follow the halacha like the Orzirua. Even though it's a recent phenomenon that generation started following the Yerzerua. But since this is what the Velt is doing, it must be possible like the Yerzerua, and that's why they make even for, let's say, Yortzeit Sudis and Yortzeit Kedeshim and Danishes and things like that. I'll forsheep the Yerzerua. What? Oh, so Reb Moshe's on the Tshuva only discusses Chutzos. Reb Shlomo Zalman in the Lichas Shlomo, he goes with the Ramban that Tanai works in Eretz Yisrael, and he wants to say also that being that the Tanai works in Eretz Yisrael, and he wants to say even Shittis, well, if you even make the Tanai, perhaps there's a din that there is a Tanai. So he said, Tzorech, you see, he's very, very lenient with it. Even though the Ramban only said Tzorech Gadol, but his Lashon in the Lichas Shlomo is that's why in Eretz Yisrael we find that people eat, they drink because the Tanai works. But in Chutz La'aretz, Reb Moshe, we have the Shita Yar Zero. So let's summarize. We have three Shittas in the Mishnah. We have Shittas Atoisis that hold only the Chabonon. We had the Ramban that only held Tzorech Gadol. We had the Orzerua that said no. That when the Gemara says Al Tanai and Asurin, it means in Gansen, Afilu Lachilus Rishus. In Eretz Yisrael, you're right to be an issue. But over here in Babel, where the Tanai works, it works even with Dvar Rishus. And Meilaz Dr. Moshe, this that we find today, that so many shuls and so many places, they have different Kadeshim and different food events in the shul, is because it must be that the Velt is going with the halacha of the Yerusalem. I just want to end off. He laying this week in this past parsha. He's atar al tamei. We discussed the process of one who goes through the purification of tamei mace. It says v'hizar atar al tamei. Someone who is tar would sprinkle on the tamei the ephod of parnum. Zakti Yerushalmi in Demai. Amri Yeshua ben Kifsi. Niyamai. All the days of my life. Hayisi kares apasik hazeh v'hiza hatar al tamei. All the days of my life, I read the pasuk. V'hiza hatar, the tar person sprinkles al tamei. Tar echad maza al tamei echad. One pure person only has the ability to purify one tamei. At shalamadati by tzara shel Yavna, until I learned from the treasure house of Yavna. V'hiza hatar al tamei shetar echad. One tar has the ability and the koiches and the magnitude. The tar afilu kama tmeim, even to be metayr multiple tmeim. What's the pshat in this Yerushalmi? Zoker Blaze Shach. We all know the story of Yavna. The Roman generals coming to conquer Eretz Yisrael, to destroy all the Yidden. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes to the Roman general and he tells him, you should know that one day you're going to become king. And he was so enlightened by hearing such a besura, he told Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, ask for your request and I'll grant your wish. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, one of the things he asked him was, Tein li Yavna v'chachamel. Do me a favor, spare the academy of Yavna. Don't kill them. Let them survive, let them live. And he granted his request, and kachava, he allowed the people of Yavna to live. What ended up happening? From these few Talmidim, these minor Talmidim, the small academy of Yavna, these Talmidim went ahead and made other Talmidim. And those Talmidim made their Talmidim. Until eventually Torah spread, and it began to grow. And it spread, until eventually Torah came back, perhaps to its full glory. You saw the impact, the effect that what a few people could have, what one person could have. That Akidei Kach, from just a few small amount of Talmidim, he had the ability to mashpia and bring that Torah into the world. I always thought of how much of an inspiration, how much of an effect, how much of an impact could one person have? It's limited. Until I learned from the stories of Yavna, of the koiches, of the magnitude, the impression that even one person could accomplish. Rav Beis, this is a very Kavod from Rav Shach. So you say to yourself, okay, someone's a Rosh Yeshiva, he's a Rav, he's a Klal Mensch, but what about the simple person? What about him? Who could he inspire, affect, make a difference? You know, we say in benching, we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom that the Rebbeinu Shalom should bench Avi Murray, my father, my master. Since when is every father is a teacher? I don't know if every father is a Rebbe. Most people are businessmen. All the Shvatim used to work besides two Shvatim. So what Arachman Yivorchas Avi Murray? It's like Rav Shimon Schwab, because in essence, every single parent is a teacher. Every single parent has an effect on the children, and if a parent doesn't realize this, unfortunately, he's not privy to the basics, the basic fundamentals of what he is as a parent. Is a Rachman Yivorchas Avi Murray, because every child learns from a parent. You know, Chafetz Chaim writes, when he speaks about the end of Shmini Salashim, about the greatness, the exaltedness, and beauty of the person who downs in a shul. He writes one of the reasons that he doesn't understand. He's bewildered how he sees that the earlier generations, the Bati Midrashim were full. People came, they davened, they came to learn. But the Chafetz Chaim said, now the new generation, he doesn't see too many kids there. He doesn't see the teenagers growing up, they're not coming to shul. So Chafetz Chaim says, why is that? He says, you know why? Because the child perhaps sees that once in a while the father misses. He misses coming to shul, he sees him davening in the house. So what does the child say? He doesn't make the calculation, doesn't make the cheshbon. What do you mean? He was there for the last 3 months, now he missed one day. The child sees that, it's not something that's so important to him, it's not something that's so chashuv to him. So the child says, it's not chashuv, and I don't want to go at all. Is a Rachman Yivorchas Avi Murray, the impression, the effect, the koiches that a person has on his mishpacha, on his wife, on his children, is lo yomen. You know, someone just told me today, I was on my way here, a chavus of mine called me, he told me he has an unbelievable ma'aser tamiyov. He heard it mamish from the mishpacha itself. The Wilhelm family from Torah Das. So in the early 1900s, he was trying to, a lot of kids in public school, he was trying to get kids to go to yeshiva. So he would go around to the public school kids' parents to ask them, to try to convince them to send the kids to yeshivas. He went to this family, this Belsky family, And he was a very wealthy man, this Mr. Belsky, a very, very wealthy person. And when Mr. Wilhelm came to ask him to send his kids to Torah Das, he had all his kids already enrolled in public school. But that day when Mr. Wilhelm came, one of the kids had chicken pox, so he's home from school. So the moment that Mr. Wilhelm came into the house, Mr. Belsky said, "Oh, you're coming for money for your yeshiva?" He says, "I'm not coming for money. I'm coming for your children." It's fine. This kid's home. He says, "No, he's sick." He says, "Okay, let me have this one." So Mr. Belsky said, "Fine. One of them you could have." You know who this person was? This is Belsky's grandfather. One man, Mr. Wilhelm. What could you think? What's he doing? Trying to get guys to come to yeshiva. The Hiza Hatorah Latame. Who would ever imagine one person's act, the effect that he had, what one person could accomplish? We saw in the treasure house of Yavna, the koiches that one person has. The Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu tells Korach, Rav Lechem b'nei Levi. After all, Korach, he wants Kahuna, he wants Nesias. Moshe Rabbeinu tells him, relax. Rav Lechem b'nei Levi, you have enough. What does that mean? Isn't he supposed to have a greater sheaf, a greater... Shoot for the stars. Okay, if you fall short, you'll get somewhere. Rav Lechem b'nei Levi, you have enough? What does that mean, Rav Lechem b'nei Levi? Adarabba, Yid's always supposed to want more. More. We're supposed to be, it comes to our Gashmi's life, we want the best. We're not going to settle on a small paycheck. So why should he settle for Ruchnius? Tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Rav Lechem b'nei Levi, don't worry about it, you have enough. What's the shot? The Zohar writes, Kol Pekuda, any mitzvah, the lespa, the chilu, or chinu that doesn't have Ahavas Hashem and Yiras Shamayim, it's not going to go upstairs. It's not going to make it. So Rav Tzvi Galinsky is the Chavetz Chaim. He says, I understand. The Zohar is saying that a mitzvah can only ascend l'mayla. It's Ba'avas Hashem, the Yiras Hashem. He said, you don't stand a chance today. We're lucky, Simon Kuf Aleph, if we could say Shemana Esrei at the first bracha, we know the Pirush Hamilus, to be Yotze the Dinner Shemana Esrei at the first bracha needs Pirush Hamilus. But to say a mitzvah, Ba'avas Hashem, the Yiras Hashem, here's the Chavetz Chaim, that's what we're doing. What are we going to do? Chavetz Chaim says, I want to tell you something. When I was growing up as a young child, he was a person who was a baker. He used to have a bakery. Occasionally, I would meet this baker. And I would ask him, I would say, who has business? He would tell me business. You don't understand. It's terrible. The aggravation that I have. This customer complains the bread is too well done. This one complains it's too raw, it's too round, it's too thin, it's too thick, it's not big enough, it's not wide enough. You don't know the aggravation that I have. After World War I broke out, the Chavetz Chaim meets this baker again. And the Chavetz Chaim is thinking to himself, you can imagine, in times of war, the economic meltdown, people are in dire financial straits. If this baker was complaining before wartime, in good times, can you imagine now? He comes over to the baker, he says, no, how's it going, how's business? Doesn't now, it's gewaltig. It's booming. Chavetz Chaim says, how's that possible? In good times it was bad, and bad times it's good. He says, no, because during wartime, anyone who could get their hands on a piece of bread will do anything. To be able to get a loaf of bread during war, he says, they come into the store the second in the morning, I open the gates, I open the door, there's a whole line of people just grabbing bread off the shelf. So the Chavetz Chaim, he turns to Rav Tzvi Galinsky and he tells him, you're right, the Zohar is referring to the Friedrich Dairis. In the Dairis, with the Tanoim, with the Amoraim, with the Nevi'im, with the Rishonim. But in our generation, in our door, it's wartime. The challenges, the Nisyonos, the daily challenges that we face every day. And the Rebbeinu Shalom sees a person, he comes to shul, he's makbid not to talk during davening. A person goes there, he does a chesed, he's kaveit in the Torah, he has a chavus in the morning, he has a chavus at night, whatever he's able to do. That the Chavetz Chaim says that's during wartime, the Rebbeinu Shalom takes anything. Isaac Moshe Rabbeinu to Korach, perhaps Yesh Loimar. Rav Lechem b'nei Levi, it's not all or nothing. It doesn't mean you have to get everything or you're an Eisrov. That's as Korach. Either I have it all or I have nothing. Rav Lechem b'nei Levi. You have to realize your lot in life, that whatever you can accomplish, that's also greatness, that's also godless. I remember, a few weeks ago, a person called me, he told me it was before the summer. He said he needs an AIDS, he wants a good therapist. I don't know why I thought I would know the number of a therapist. I'm not a therapist, I don't have a license at all, but he needs a good therapist, he's very depressed. So I know therapy is a very important thing, and they help a lot of people, but I'm a Talmud of Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, that's how. Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, he always used to tell us that he feels if someone's depressed, you know why he's depressed? Because he's not learning like he could. Because Torah, it's an amazing thing. Torah has something that's magnetic. Same way our guf, we need sustenance. We have to eat, we have to drink, and we have to provide for our guf. So too also there's a spiritually our neshamas, if they feel deficient, if there's a deficiency, something's lacking, they're lacking sustenance, then Mela the neshama feels low. So Shmuel Bremer, we always used to tell the Baruch, we used to tell us, learn more. You'll see. I want to show Shalom Chasapara. What does that have to do with? What does that have to do with anything? There's something spiritual in there. There's something beruchnius that the neshama attaches to, that elevates the neshama, that makes the neshama happy. He said, Shmuel used to tell us, learn more. You'll see. You'll feel better. He's Rabbi B'nai Levi. So I told this person, make a seder. Why don't you get a chavus in the morning? You'll enjoy. You'll start off your day. You learn. Somebody says, me, I'm a working guy. I'm not Karel. I can't learn. That's atzas koirach. It's not everything or nothing. That's atzas koirach. Rabbi B'nai Levi. You don't understand what it means. An hour in the morning, whatever you can do. That's also choshev about Ribono Shel Olam. It's internalized. The message of Reb Shach. The Hiza HaTorah al Tamei. Tamei Echad. Torah Echad is Metar L'Harbe Tmeim. You know, we all heard of the tragic saga, the story that captivated literally the planet of the submersible who went on a voyage to witness the wreckage of the Titanic. It imploded. They all died. Rabbi, explain to me. The people on the submersible, they were billionaires. They could have done kol chayvesha ba'olam, whatever they wanted, they could have done. Was fought the Ryder Cup? To go bulk yourself in a tin can, take 14,000 feet down in the Atlantic Ocean? What do you think? They can do whatever they want. I don't know what these guys do. Go to Bahamas, go to Vegas, I don't know, Vegas, whatever they do. There's no end. They had all the money. This is what was a thrill for them. This is what gave them enlightenment. What's the pshat? The Torah says, you know why? Because Chazal tell us that there's nothing that satisfies a person other than Torah or mitzvahs. And therefore, when it comes to Gashmis, no matter what a person does, he's never fulfilled. No matter what he does, he always wants more. So they already did it. It already became boring to them. He never gets satisfied. When it comes to Torah mitzvahs, a person goes and he does a chesed. A person can't afford camp, and you pay for that kid's camp. It mamish lifts you up like nothing else. Something that's ruchnius, that's spiritual. A person davens, he has a seder. He's nice to his wife. He spends time with his kids. He learns with his kids. He's mechazik his kids. There's no greater simcha than that. Shtaka b'zoicha, we're entering the 3 weeks of, we mourn the Beis Hamikdash, and we yearn for Tzipis Yeshua, we yearn for Mashiach. Kol's man is still in goals, hopefully not for too long. We should internalize the areas of Hamikdash. There's a mitzvah about the Knesses, about the Drushes, Yatzchus, V'oyle, Mikdash Mat, Asidin Li Kavod, Kol Bat Knesses, L'Eretz Yisrael. Shkoyach.